Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lonnie Diane Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lonnie Diane Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm story expert with mom hair, Lonnie Diane Rich.
And I'm film scholar and zombie ghost thing, Noelle LaCroix. And we're here today to talk about Lessons, the first episode of Season 7. Lessons aired on September 24th, 2002, and was written by Joss Whedon and directed by David Solomon.
Still Pretty is a fully spoiled, full-spectrum Buffy podcast, so if you haven't seen all of the show, go take care of that, and we'll just be here, deadening young minds.
This is a bad time to be a good guy. So let's go on patrol. In Lessons, we start in Istanbul, where a girl is running for her life, pursued by two men in hooded cloaks. They catch up to her and stab her with an ornate dagger. Meanwhile, at night in a Sunnydale graveyard, a vampire breaks through his grave while Buffy trains Dawn to fight.
It's about power. Who's got it? Who knows how to use it?
Dawn struggles to get the best of the vampire and misses the heart when she stakes him. Buffy pulls the vampire off of Dawn and dusts it, and then says that vampires and demons are nothing compared to what's coming.
It is my great pleasure and privilege to announce the official opening, on the very ground that it first stood upon, of the brand new, state-of-the-art Sunnydale High.
Out in the lovely English countryside, Willow magically pulls a Paraguayan flower through the earth as Giles watches over her. She's confused about why she wasn't put in jail or killed for what she's done, and Giles doesn't tell her why. He just says she's still Willow. Meanwhile, in Sunnydale, Xander brings over the blueprints for the new high school, and it turns out that the Hellmouth, which used to be under the library, is now directly under the new principal's office.
The last two principals were Eton. Who'd even apply for that job?
Buffy takes Dawn to school and meets the new principal, Robin Wood. He's young, he's hot, and he thinks Buffy's a mom, and since we all know that the most terrible thing any woman can do is have the fucking gall to survive her youth, this immediately sends Buffy down a devastating shame spiral. Luckily, she spots a creepy ghost in the bathroom and focuses on what really matters: getting Dawn the hell out of there. She busts into the classroom while Dawn's introducing herself and embarrasses Dawn, then crawls away, leaving Dawn to close her charming introduction with,
I also had a sister.
At the espresso pump, Halfrek and Anya get coffee while Halfrek warns Anya that everyone has noticed that Anya's heart is not exactly in the vengeance game. Her spells are toothless. She's hardly eviscerated anyone lately. Halfrek warns that everyone's demonic spidey sense is tingling, and it's a bad time to be a good guy. At the construction site, Buffy reports her zombie ghost experience to Xander, while at school, Dawn has a close encounter of her own, as a ghost borrows a pencil from her and then stabs Dawn in the eye with it. Dawn screams, but when everyone turns around, the ghost is gone.
I'm sorry. There was a bee flew in my eye.
Dawn goes to the bathroom to gather herself while Buffy returns to the school to poke around. Buffy bumps into Principal Wood, who chats with her a bit about her time at the high school. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, Dawn meets a kid named Kit, who also saw something creepy. And when they look in the mirror, 3 zombie ghosts stare back at them in the reflection. And then the floor opens up and they fall through to the basement. Back in England, Willow freaks out, sensing a darkness half a world away.
The Hellmouth.
It's gonna open. Just
could have swallowed us all.
In the basement, Dawn and Kit bump into Carlos, who has also seen things. Before he can compare notes with Dawn and Kit, a zombie ghost janitor comes after them with an axe. Dawn remembers her new cell phone and calls Buffy. Buffy rushes out of her conversation with the principal and goes into the bathroom, finding the hole to the basement. She hops down to the basement and is immediately confronted by the ghosts, who blame her for not saving them, while they block her from a door behind them. Buffy gets past them and goes through the door to find...
What did you do?
I tried to cut it out.
Spike is looking pretty rough. Buffy tries to talk to him, but the dead janitor ghost rudely interrupts by trying to kill her. She gets rid of him and tries again to talk to Spike, but Spike's laughing weirdly and talking to people Buffy can't see, and his chest is all covered with deep gashes. Buffy's cell phone rings and it's Dawn, and tries to figure out what's happening when Spike says it's a talisman. Buffy tries to talk to him, but he's unreachable, so she leaves and calls Xander, telling him about the talisman. Dawn and her friends fight the ghosts for a while. Buffy shows up and joins the fray. Up in the bathroom, Xander finds the talisman, and the ghost girl jumps on him. He breaks it in half, and all the ghosts disappear.
There's always a talisman.
Buffy leads Dawn and her friends back up to the school and sends them to classes. Once again, Principal Wood shows up and offers Buffy a low-paying job working with the students. Considering that Buffy wants to keep an eye on the old hellmouth, that's pretty perfect. Meanwhile, downstairs in the basement, Spike is crouching on the floor, tormented as Warren paces around him.
She's a girl with sugar and spice and everything useless unless you're baking.
Warren morphs into Glory,
Oh, my name will be on everyone's lips.
who morphs into Adam,
She's exactly where I want her to be.
the mayor,
So what do you think? You get your soul back and everything will be Jim Dandy?
Drusilla,
Will always be mine.
the master.
Not about right. Not about wrong.
Finally, Buffy.
It's about power.
All right, so Noelle, here we are. Oh my God, we are in season 7. The reality of senior year at high school feels a little weird.
We made it! Back to high school.
We made it.
Yeah.
So what did you think about this episode? Both as an episode of Buffy, as a launch for a new season. How do you feel about it?
I mean, my overall response to this episode is meh, which is funny because there's some stuff in it that I really enjoy. But also, huh? I mean, this feels like a disjointed season opener, but I don't know if that's because it kind of is or if it's because season 7 is kind of a blur for me personally.
Yeah.
When I first watched the show, this is the point where we picked up the pace and did a season over a weekend, probably because I was feeling fancy with my 5-disc Netflix subscription or whatever.
Oh my God. I first watched Buffy on discs from Netflix as well. So that is, yeah.
So as we go through season 7, it's going to be interesting because I have maybe 4 or 5 kind of moments that I remember, but it truly is this like blur, and I'm not sure I could tell you. I mean, I can name a couple of individual episodes because they're great.
Right.
But overall, like, there's going to be a lot that I don't remember. And
that's going to be so interesting.
Which is going to be interesting. And there was a lot that I was confused by in this because I know that they're setting up season 7.
Yeah.
And all of the I don't know, tomfoolery, madness, shenanigans, whatever. But you love season 7. So I am excited. I am excited to like re-experience this for the first time with you specifically.
I cannot remember what it was like to not know everything that happens in season 7. So I wonder if my response to this is clearly influenced by knowing exactly what's going to happen. I love season 7. I know a lot of people don't like it. That's okay. I will love it enough for all of us. Y'all can hate it there in your cars and while you're running and you shout at me because I love it. That's fine. I am loving it for you, so you don't have to. I think it's a really good start to the season. This episode has got problems. Sure, I know the season has problems. I understand why people don't like season 7. But you know, and a lot of things I don't know, because I love it, so I can't speak to why people don't like season 7. I can speak to what I've heard, and it feels like it doesn't feel as much like Buffy. It's kind of like this different tone. It's a different the characters are all different. Like, it feels like everything has changed, and I think that that's okay. I think that it should have changed. I think that if you go through what everyone in Buffy has gone through and you don't change, that's not really great storytelling. So, I mean, the characters have evolved. The tone has evolved. They've grown up. We don't have the same kind of monsters or humor that we loved from, say season 3 or even season 5. But for me, that is part of the reason why I love season 7 and this episode in particular. Like, I love this episode in particular. I love the fact that we've got these bookends where we start with It's About Power and we end with It's About Power, because what we are doing is making a statement. That's showing that we know what we're doing, with this episode. And I really, really like that. So yeah, Buffy season 7, I love it. It's a whole new world, right? Even with its flaws, I love that it's doing something bold and different and something new. First of all, we start with a cold open, right?
Yeah.
Which is weird. Have we ever, okay, I know I'm going to throw this out and somebody's going to be like, how do you even call yourself a Buffy expert? I don't call myself a Buffy expert. I don't know every moment of Buffy. But I think this is the first cold open we've had with no known characters. I mean, if you excuse the pilot where none of the characters are known in the beginning, it's Darla and a vampire boy,
right.
But I don't know that we have cold opens that don't involve at least one of our characters, one of our beloveds, so that feels a little bit weird. But we have this, or even somebody who's not even in Sunnydale. I mean, this is Istanbul, which was once Constantinople.
But you can't go back to Constantinople. Been a long time gone. All right, we have to.
All right, anyway. So yeah, that was some low-hanging fruit of a joke. But anyway. So this girl is in Istanbul. She's getting chased. She's getting stabbed with this knife that appears to be. We're very, very proud of this prop. Because
very important dagger.
We love that dagger. But we got these hooded figures that are chasing this girl and stabbing her. And then we have that. And the thing is that a cold open is one thing if the rest of the episode is going to actually address what happens in that cold. Nothing.
Nope. That's it. We don't even know what that is about. Of course, as the season goes on, we will find out this is a potential slayer who is being killed by the bringers. But at this point, we don't know that. We don't know what's going on. We go right into Buffy training Dawn, which is the first thing that's really different, is that instead of Buffy running this endless, protection game on Dawn, where no, we must cover your eyes and you can't say, she's teaching her how to fight. Which I love. I mean, I love that she's training Dawn. Yeah, me too. And this scene is a huge standout from this episode for me all of the reasons. It's just, they're so great. We'll get into it when we get into talking about Dawn specifically, but
oh yeah,
holy crap, I love Dawn in season 7. That's it. That's the whole thing. Yeah.
Yes. No, Dawn is fabulous in season 7, and I love the way she's being treated in season 7 too. Is that she's being treated as part of the group, not somebody to be protected, not somebody to be, kept in the dark or treated like a child. She is one of the team, and I really love that. I love that she misses the heart, and that's something that Buffy then says, I missed on my first time out too, which is kind of nice. And that discussion of who has the power. He has the power. And I think that is kind of interesting. And that's something that, of course, we're going to be delving into more, kind of that theme of who has the power throughout this season. We're also returning to the high school, which is where we started, but now it's from a different perspective. It's a different high school, so, I mean, I like that we're going back. It's the same, but it's all different. And Buffy's, commentary seems smaller at the end of the episode, which is what you always, like, anybody who's ever gone back to high school, that's the cliche thing that somebody goes to college, comes back to the high school and like, oh, it seems smaller, because it is smaller by your perspective. Your world has broadened, and so the school seems small. So I love that we're going back. I love that we're revisiting. I love that Dawn in this episode, like, she's allowed to use her wits to deal with danger. She plays a huge role in saving herself and her friends, but also calls on Buffy. It's not, I have to do it on my own. It's, I am part of the team, which I really, really love. Spike coming back is this is a huge game changer. He has a soul. His struggle with that reality has completely overwhelmed his mental capacity to deal with it. And I love that we're seeing in Spike consequence and regret and sorrow for what he did to Buffy. I love that he didn't get a soul, and it's all fine. He's standing on Buffy's doorstep with flowers telling her, come on, baby, I've changed, I love that he got his soul back to get her back. And now with his soul, he finally understands why he can't get to have her. Like that he doesn't get to have her. So I love all of that we're doing with Spike. I love that Xander's all grown up. He's a real guy with a real job. He's wearing a suit, man. He's got all these, he's got teams of people that he's running, teams that are working on the high school. I think that's great. The new principal, smoking hot, right?
I mean,
and
yeah.
I mean, look, DB Woodside, I'm sorry. That is a pretty man.
Listen.
Yes.
Listen. Yeah.
I know. It's nice. And he's taken a chunk out of the unbearable whiteness of Buffy. So there is that, which is nice. We've had 6 seasons of unbelievable blinding whiteness on Buffy. Now we're getting a little bit more diversity, which is nice.
He gets to be complex, which is nice.
It's
real nice.
And, since we're fully spoiled, he survives.
Right?
So,
how about that?
So that's one body of color we don't have to see on the road this year, which is really, really nice. I mean, we're still like, come on, we're still going to have race issues with Buffy this season. We're going to talk about that as we come to them. But it is nice to see some of that whiteness taken down a notch. So that's good. And then we have Willow, reconnecting with her magic under the watchful eye of the Coven, and Giles as her Dumbledore, supporting her through this process.
Which I don't even know, man. I mean, like, there's so much. This is my like, this whole episode, I'm just like, wait, hold on. What? I mean, I don't know. Okay. So.
Yes, no, let's go.
All right.
Talk about it.
Let's go. Let's just
don't hold back, baby.
Let's do a deep dive into my confusion with this.
Let's do it. Yes.
So, all right. I love seeing I love the beginning of a new season just to see everybody kind of newly doing whatever their new thing is going to be.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I like the idea in theory of going back to the high school because, it's Dawn's turn now. Yay! We get to do high school all over again. And also, that's kind of what the show was about from the start. So then to loop around and like do this different perspective. But I find it, I don't know, I think problematic is probably too strong a word. But this thing with Buffy being read as Dawn's mother twice feels like a joke at the expense of solo parents and especially young mothers and folks in non-nuclear families. And I just don't like it. Like, it does not work for me. I don't enjoy it. But the strangest thing about that to me is how mom and dad, Buffy and Xander, look and act with Dawn. And then, of course, because we are fully spoiled, right, we know that the show isn't setting up anything with Buffy and Xander. It's not a Buffy-Xander marriage that's coming. Right. Thank goodness. But the whole, like, tableau at the breakfast table is still, like, mother, father, child, especially with the, oh, did you give it to her yet? No, not, like, they're having a conversation about this gift.
Yes.
That Dawn doesn't know about. It feels very parental. And then they pull up to the school in this family car as this family unit. And it's very mother, father, child. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with that beyond just noticing that this is something that we see a lot in American film and television, regardless of the characters' relationships to each other.
Right.
So it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter that we're not setting up a family unit in this way, but our media, like in the United States, will go out of its way to establish and reestablish the man, woman, child family
this
as a
traditional idea
element.
of a nuclear family. Yes.
It's like it's like a visual leitmotif in American film and television, and we get it here, and I find it, I don't know, it stuck out to me. It felt odd to me, and I think what they're doing is Buffy and Xander are adults now, and they are the Scooby group now too, right? It's just the three of them, so it's more so the three of them as the sort of new heart of the Scoobies, which of course then everyone will filter back in as we go. Everyone except Tara, of course. But I don't know. There's something about it, maybe because it is such a strong visual leitmotif on television in the United States, that I'm like, oh, they're doing heteronormative something with this.
Yeah. I mean, that very traditional idea of the nuclear family, and we're supporting that. I mean, right now it's just Buffy, Xander, and Dawn. So that's what we've got to work with. But it's not just that. It's all of these things that you bring up, that like everything. I mean, even down to Xander is driving the car, you know,
in his suit and tie.
In his suit
good
and
for him.
tie. Yes, and
also,
he comes in and Buffy is making breakfast. I made cereal. Do you really make cereal? It's that cute little, but she's playing that traditional mom role of cooking. He comes in with his business papers and his briefcase and all of this stuff, right? Yeah, it very much does have that. I mean, the joke about Buffy must be the mom, you know, I read as a, you know, like oh my God, the worst thing in the world that she could possibly be is either fat or old, and she's definitely not fat. So let's give her a shot at being old. Let's just make her feel like she has outlived her youth and done that horribly egregious thing, you know? So to me, like, I was annoyed with it for a completely different reason, but yeah, like I completely see, you know, that they kind of are falling into that. It's not just that the three of them are there, but that we're putting them in those very traditional kind of roles.
Yeah. It's just, you know, and it's one of those things that like pops up over and over again, and whether it's supposed to be there or not, I don't know. I found it distracting, and I'll probably just continue to watch for it because
it's a really interesting insight. I think
there you go.
Cool.
I mean, it's an interesting episode for insight in that it is really, I mean, it's literally called Lessons, right? This is is this episode going to teach us how to watch season 7? Perhaps, I don't know.
Maybe.
But what I love is that we get the repeat of lesson 1, it's always real. We hear that a couple of times, and I'm so curious about this, especially in the context of a shape-shifting evil, right? Like, and it's an interesting lesson to sort of wrap around Dawn, who started off wondering, am I real? We seem to have moved past that with Dawn. At least Dawn has moved past it. So now the answer is yes, it's always real.
Right.
But I really, really like that as a kind of vehicle for the season. Like, if we're going to take everything that is season 7 and pile it into a big van, you know, like, really, like, it's the vehicle.
I love that metaphor.
Because if you're wondering if something is real, the answer is yes. You know, and in this episode, it's like, yes, Spike in the basement is real. The zombie ghosts are real. That sense you have that something is going on with the principal is real.
Yeah, it's like the day of evil, right?
Yeah, you know,
which is not a line we've gotten yet this season.
Like, it's not what you think, but like there is something up with this dude. So I don't know. Like, I love that. Lesson 1, it's always real. Cool. All right.
It's always real.
It's always real.
Well, because those are questions that we've had in the past, especially with regard to Dawn, right? Because Dawn, all of those memories were, you know, built by monks, you know? And yet, if you remember the experience, I mean, everything that has ever happened to us in our lives is only real because we remember it. So if you have a memory, does that then make that experience real? You have had the experience. So what is reality? And I think that like that's definitely a philosophical question that Buffy has bumped up against more than once. And here we are with lesson 1, it's always real in the face of this, you know, shape-shifting evil that cannot take corporeal form, which I really, really love. And the big thing that disappoints me in Buffy is that they end up giving Buffy something physical to fight in a season that should be about the internal demons, the things that you swing at and cannot connect with, you know, like the non-corporeal evil. How do you fight that? And we end up going back to traditional Buffy fighting instead of really exploring that kind of question of what is reality? Is it not real if it's not physical, you know? And I think there's so much interesting stuff that's set up by that unfortunately we don't realize, no pun intended, throughout the rest of the season. But I mean, I love that, like, you know, when she goes down and she sees Spike in the basement, the first thing she says is, Spike, are you real?
And he doesn't answer her because he can't, because he doesn't know yet. I don't know. Like, it's a whole, it's a whole thing. Like, what is real? You know, his whole thing is make me what I was before.
Right.
Oh, careful what you ask for, my dude.
Well, and what he is now is not what he has ever been. He has never been this.
Yeah.
So that is also really interesting.
Yeah.
You know, I actually love that whole thing.
It's
I love
great.
Spike with a soul. I love the game changer of that. I think that that's fabulous.
Oh, it's
but
great.
We also, you know, we're talking about this lesson. Is it real? But I mean, also the first thing we open and we close with, it's about power. So what is this episode actually saying about power? Or do we even know?
I think we don't know. I mean, okay, I come away from this with both a sense of what they mean by power, but also some, I mean, I was going to say some questions. No, I have a lot of questions about this. You know, and season 7, episode 1, like, we're not going to wrap this up really neatly. We're kind of defining it by defining around it. But, like, let's define power, shall we?
Yeah.
Because when Buffy, in that scene in the graveyard, when Buffy asks who has the power, I immediately want to know in what sense.
Right.
Right? Like, which is kind of what Dawn is asking without asking. She's like, well, I have the stake.
Right.
And Buffy,
She's
I love Buffy.
figuring it out.
The stake is not the power. And Dawn goes, but he's new, which I love so much. Like, heck yeah.
Right.
Like, come on. I should have some advantage here. But like, when I think power, when I think about that word, I think influence over other people.
Right.
Like, I specifically think about like military or governmental power. You know, the almost the structural ability to shape reality for others. And I don't know what that says about me and my interests, but
wow, yeah,
that's kind of where I
that's
go.
That's a really interesting idea, though, the ability to shape reality for others,
right.
which is in itself an abuse of power. Well, right.
And we've talked about this on Still Pretty before, that like we, you and I, and also as a society, we're pretty comfortable with like shadow use of power, like power over, power to control. But I'm not, you know, I don't think that that's the full definition that we're going with here. So I pulled up dictionary.com.
Oh, are we defining our goddamn terms?
We are defining,
as Dr. Kelly Jones would tell us to do immediately.
Oh, yeah. Well, so important, right? Because if we're not, if I say it's about power and you go, cool, it's about power, and then we think we're having the same conversation.
Right.
But there are a ton of definitions of power. Tons of them. Here are the ones that I think are most resonant and probably relevant to this podcast and this show, but I'm looking forward to more defining of terms because this is kind of my favorite thing. So here's what I got. The ability to do or act, capability of doing or accomplishing something. Okay, sure. Great or marked ability to do or act. Strength, might, force. That's kind of where I feel like we're treading. with Buffy here, but also the possession of control or command over people, authority, ascendancy, which is a great word that we don't hear often enough.
Right.
Or power is, I like this one too. A person or thing that possesses or exercises authority or influence, as in the powers that be.
Right.
So, all right. In the context of this fight with a vampire, Buffy says it's about power. Who's got it? Who knows how to use it? But the fact that this is a he-him vampire after we've just seen a woman in Istanbul probably definitely held down on the ground and stabbed, it's hard not to read this as he has the power because he's a him.
Right. I mean, this isn't a female vampire.
Yeah.
And almost never, very rarely are they female vampires, right?
Yeah, we get a handful over the course of, we get a handful over the course of the show. And only a couple of them are.
They're only female when there's a reason.
They're named,
right, for them to be female
for the most part.
Or it's the one that Riley, was in the house with. But like usually, if we're just doing vampire, we default male, and we only make it a female vampire if there's a reason for it to be a female vampire.
Yeah.
So we do very much view this power as a very kind of like male centric power,
right? And the Slayer is a she, like that's
always
part of
she,
that's part of the deal. I mean, so Buffy literally says in this scene, it doesn't matter how well prepared you are or how well armed you are, you're a little girl. Sounds like Buffy, with all of her ability to affect change in the world, power, has bought into the patriarchal model of power.
Well, yeah, especially because let's not forget in Checkpoint in season 5, it's about power. I have it. You don't. And then she tells the patriarchal model of power, aka the Watchers Council, exactly what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And she exercises that power there. So the idea that she is telling Dawn that she's a little girl and that being a little girl means that you have no power. It feels kind of counter to everything that we've been trying to talk about in our quote unquote super fucking feminist show, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and there's something gross about this coming on the heels of this, I mean, senseless murder of an unnamed brown woman that's not, I understand that it's part of the season story that they're telling, but when we look at that as like a prologue to everything that happens, we root for this girl to get away, and then she's held down and stabbed and she doesn't get away. Yeah. And we follow that up with Buffy saying, it doesn't matter how well prepared you are, how well armed you are, you're a little girl. I'm just like, I don't know. I don't. I don't like it.
It would also be different if it's like, it doesn't matter how well prepared you are, how well armed you are. You're, human, and this thing is supernatural. Like if that was the source of their power, that it's some kind of supernatural thing, which is also the source of Buffy's power. Although we're going to find out more about the source of Buffy's power in season 7, which may be another reason why people don't like season 7. And there's good arguments for that. Anyway,
yeah, there's a lot to say about that.
Good arguments for that. We'll get to that when we get there. I'm just saying, like, people who don't like season 7, I get it. But yeah, it does feel like an incredibly gendered discussion of power in a show that has been priding itself on this ability to like kind of like toss these gender stereotypes over a wall and be super feminist, when in reality it buys into a lot of these gendered ideas. Well, even within the text of the show itself.
I mean, I don't read it as particularly feminist in the sense that I think a lot of this is about having a reason to torture and kill girls.
Yes.
Like, like I don't want to get too extra textual about it, but like, if you want to torture and abuse young women, a great way to do that is to put them in a position in the narrative where it quote unquote makes sense for that to happen to them. Like we can just, I don't know.
I'm not going to argue that Buffy is a super feminist text. It's not. Buffy is something that happened because Joss Whedon wanted to subvert a trope, and then everybody was like, oh wow, that's like so feminist because here you've got this girl who can fight like a man, and that's what makes a strong female character, which by the way isn't. It's bullshit, and I hate it. I hate the idea that like you girls want a strong female character, let's give you Black Widow. Have you seen her in her leather cat suit, like and taking men out with her vagina? Don't believe me, watch Iron Man 2. Happens like 5 times. That's a whole other thing. And Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the movie, takes a man out with her vagina, or a vampire out with her vagina. Anyway, go ahead and watch it. That's exactly what happens. So long story short, this like understanding of what actually a strong female character is has to do not with the ability to beat up people in a catsuit, but actually with the complexity with which the character is written. We have a lot of female characters within the realm of Buffy that are written with a great deal of complexity, and that's awesome, you know? But I think that if you look at Buffy as a feminist text, you are going to be like rudely disappointed, and you know, and that's okay. Like I don't consider it to be a great feminist text. I do not consider Joss Whedon to be a great feminist. And that is something I've discussed, and I'm not going to go into that right now. But this discussion of power, it's about power, I think is it a discussion? It's a statement at the beginning and the end of this episode. And at the end of this episode, I am left with the exact question, what do you mean by power?
Yeah.
You know, like what is it that we mean? And I think that your is well sourced here because we don't have clarity on what do we mean by power.
It's,
you know?
Yeah, whatever it is though, it's highly masculinized ? I think.
I think know. I think it's default to the masculine.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, especially since, I mean, we also get the idea of power, you know, out in the English countryside. Giles tells Willow, you're connected to a great power, whether you feel it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
This isn't a hobby or an addiction. It's inside you now, this magic. You're responsible for it. Okay, I give up, you guys. Like, I give up. What? So power is a connection. You're responsible for it. But he has it in the vampire slayer or vampire slayer trainee dynamic. Also, it's not about good or evil. It's about power. I'm out. I got nothing. Nope. What?
Okay. In all fairness, I will absolutely concede the point that clarity is not this episode's strength, right? I get it. Especially because here we are with Willow, right? Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Willow and the morphine magic metaphor, right? like what is, okay. Here we started out with magic as the metaphor for beautiful, wonderful lesbian sex, right? Yes. All for it. That's great, right? And then it becomes drugs. And now it is something else or whatever. And the problem with the shifting metaphor is that the whole point of a metaphor is that you have a symbol within the story that means something else, right?
Yeah.
So once you define what it means, if you start monkeying with that meaning, then you lose all of the power, as long as we're talking about power, all the power behind a metaphor and how it works. So in the beginning, the magic was gay sex and the overall discovery of Willow's real self. And I dug it. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
Then the magic became drugs and addiction to power, the power to make the world as you would like to have it, including a massive violation of her girlfriend Tara, who ends up being the reason why she tries to destroy the world. But like, you know, we kind of skip over how Willow used her power to like really super violate Tara and Tara's autonomy. That's not great.
Yeah.
So now do we go back to, is magic gayness again? Is she now discovering her true self and her true power now that she's gotten over the sense that she should be ashamed of what her gayness gives her? Is this a gay empowerment story? Is it not gayness at all? Is it something else entirely? Or are we just textually being like, magic is a power and she gets it through this flower and that's how that works? Like, I don't like, I'm so confused. I feel like we have just messed with this so much that I don't know what this is supposed to mean anymore.
Yeah. Well, the fact that we have to have Giles say, like, it's not a hobby or an addiction. Okay, great. So it's not, it's not a thing you do. It's a thing you are.
Mm-hmm.
And you're responsible for, okay. I mean, this is the closest we get to Uncle Ben. With great power comes great, like
responsibility. Yes.
You are, okay, Willow, you are literally connected to everything. She can feel the earth, which, I mean, hot, gimme, like, great, love it.
Yeah.
But also, what? And then she's expressing all of this doubt about the Coven. She says they're the most incredible women I've ever met, which, okay, cool, as I suspected. The magic that Giles borrows to zap Willow, whatever, is all borrowed feminine power. It's fine. Yeah. I'm not angry and bitter about it at all. It's fine. But then I don't know, man. It's a mess. It's a mess. It not.
I can't make head or tails of it.
It's
I'm going to
not
tell you. Yeah.
Magic as gayness. I don't think
anymore.
But as you say, when you mess with a metaphor, you can't. Okay, I'm not the story expert. Maybe you can do this. But my sense as a viewer is you can't reset a metaphor. That even if you try to do that, you're still going to carry whatever meaning that metaphor had before.
Right. You can't unring that bell.
Yeah.
Right. So once first it means this, then it means this, and it doesn't mean both of them at the same time, but it kind of maybe a little bit they switch back and forth because even in the middle of Willow's season 6 power hungry thing, we had the song, with Tara that the magic was the gay sex again. Like we had that whole thing. Right. I'm under your spell, which of course also speaks to the violation of Tara from Willow, which is something we don't really talk about at all, and that's kind of awful. But anyway, so like there's all this stuff, and then Willow did all of these things that are terrible, and that if any villain had done them, we would be seriously like, where are the consequences? And the consequences are that she gets to hang out in England with a bunch of amazing women, and I love a redemption story, but again, like, because we have such an incredible lack of clarity, and because Warren so desperately fucking deserved it, like, it's really hard for us to kind of like figure out in what ways we hold Willow accountable, although we never hold her accountable truly. Tara does a little bit for violation of Tara's mind and body when she's under the spell, right? So everything with Willow, like at this point, this is what happens to me in season 7 with Willow, and I'm just going to come clean and say I give up. I give up, and I just say I love Willow. I'm happy that she's better and that she's learning and that she's coming into her power with more understanding and more responsibility for it. Okay, fine. Like that's my Willow response is okay, fine.
Okay, fine.
What are you going to do?
Yeah, well, she says, I want to be Willow. Giles asked her if she wants to be punished. And she says, I want to be Willow, which I think is meant to be a sign of her recovery, right? Because when she's all rage, grief,
Willow doesn't live there anymore. Stop
calling me that. Let me tell you something about Willow.
Yes.
I mean, I think overall it's supposed to be a good thing. She's supposed to be, I'm going to use another loaded word. It's the potential, right? She has the potential to do great damage because of how much, because of how capable she is. So it's about connectedness. I do love the whole everything is connected bit. That is lovely. and I'm here for it.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like I just have to let everything that came before go.
Yeah.
Because the metaphor was broken and you can't unbreak it. So the only thing you have to do, like as a viewer, is either you throw up your hands and say, oh, okay, or it's constant cognitive dissonance throughout the entire season. And I just don't have that kind of mental energy at this point.
I will bounce off and then like rebounce onto all the stuff with Willow this season. I can feel it already. I'll be like, nope, and then I'll just come right back. And
then it's gonna be like, okay, like you just at a certain point you're just like, all right, I understand y'all broke this thing and now you're doing the best you can given what you got, and we can't go back and unbreak it, so okay, fine. The other thing that I find really interesting about this season, especially with Buffy, is the horror element that we have. This is a different, Buffy has always been a quote unquote like horror show. If you have to put it in a genre, it's got vampires. So, okay, I guess, but the vast majority of it was fighting latex demons and rubber snakes and like whatever. So it never really had that sense of horror. And everybody knows, like, the whole irony is like, I can't handle horror. It absolutely lays me out. And, but yet here I am studying Buffy in such incredible depth as part of my professional existence. A huge part of my professional existence. But Buffy has never really been to me horror, not the kind of horror that puts me in the fetal position until we get to season 7, because now we have come, I believe, to play. Season 7, I think, actually turns Buffy into a legit horror show. I mean, the ghosts here in this episode are truly creepy. That one that takes the pencil and stabs Dawn in the eye. I mean, Jesus, and the first itself at the end is actually scary. And overall in the season, what ends up happening with the first is a disappointment to me. Because again, like, it's, we could have done something really interesting with we could have done something really interesting with the big bad that you can't punch. You know what I'm saying? Like, because that's the big thing, is like Buffy punches things. And if she was suddenly faced with a monster that could be this devastating that she had to fight in a way that she had never fought a monster before, that'd be great. We don't do that. We end up just having the monster call up these uber vamps to fight for it or whatever, fine. Like, up until now, we've been fighting rubber snakes and vampires that can't speak through a really obstructive mouthpiece. The first is actually genuinely scary. And there are a lot of things that happen in this season. In a couple of episodes, we're going to get to the Gnarl demon.
Yes.
Which is freaking gross and scary and creepy. And so like this season is actually legit horror. This season, there's some of the stuff that I watch in Buffy that I have a real difficult time with. And I like that because it's showing Buffy as a character and as a show kind of evolving into something different, into something more serious, into something that has, more teeth, pardon that expression. So, and the thing is for me too, that the comedy within the show has evolved as well into something that is a little different tonally, and that offsets the horror for me pretty well, to the point where it's, I get creeped out. Same time, same place is going to make my skin crawl, for a little bit. But overall, like, I find it to be, to feel more grown up. Now, you actually, not that this is a high bar, but like horror more than I do.
I do.
Right?
Yeah.
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 So how do you feel? Does this still feel ridiculous to you? Is my sensitivity just too high for this?
This episode to me does not feel particularly horror intense. What does feel where the horror starts to step in for me in a big way with season 7 is the idea that the big bad is evil, like capital E evil, which means that what we're gonna do, we're gonna do the thing that horror does so beautifully, which is address taboos, like things that we do not talk about,
right?
And evil, like real, like evil, and what, not just is it real, Spoiler alert, it is. Lesson 1. It's real.
Lesson 1. It's all real.
It's real. And we're going to talk about it and what it is and what it looks like. And spoiler alert, it looks like all kind of things. So it's in that kind of intellectual exploration. That's where the horror starts to step in for me. Visually, I think this episode, I mean, the makeup is great on the ghost zombies. They're looking more, as we progress through the seasons, our budgets get better and our skills get honed and we figure out what works and what doesn't. I mean, it looks great, but it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't read as more intense to me yet.
It definitely does to me. But again, I think I have a much higher sensitivity to that kind of thing than most human people. So, so I get it. One of the things that I really love about what we do with the story with Buffy overall, and specifically in this season is that, Buffy is actually one of the first TV shows to have an arc that ran purposely through a whole season. Like as we started getting into TV shows in the mid 80s that, we had the VCR then and people could record and rewatch episodes. We started telling more stories that were more series, even if it would be like a mini arc in the middle of a season or whatever, where we'd have episodes that didn't reset at the end so that we could start at any point and watch whatever reruns in any order. And it would all be the same thing because we reset back to start at the end of an episode. We've started to have these changes that happen and that last for an entire season, for an entire series. And that's a really, really fun kind of sort of Russian nesting doll kind of storytelling, right? Is that we've got a story, a full and complete narrative within the episode itself. Then we've got that episode as part of, say, a mini arc in which we've got a story that lasts over a few episodes. Then we've got a bunch of these mini arcs that then feed into the entire season arc. And now here we are seeing ourselves going back to the beginning. You're going back to the high school. We're talking about what it's about. We're landing this entire arc. So we're starting from when Buffy first stepped foot into Sunnydale High to now, when she will, at the end of this season, be one of the last people to ever step foot in Sunnydale High. And that whole arc, the way that we start with one girl in all the world and then move into everybody who has that potential, that everybody will have that power, that we're going to share it, I think that that's a really interesting thing. And for me, this is the reason why I fell in love with Buffy. There are a lot of reasons why I like Buffy, but as a narrative person, the idea of all these nested narratives that then actually build in and resolve this way. I absolutely love it as far as like a long-term story experiment. And this is one of the first shows to actually do that effectively. We're seeing more and more shows do that. I think Breaking Bad is another fair example of this kind of thing. Lost does try. It stumbles a little bit in some places, but Lost, I think, does some of that too. And so to have a narrative that by the series finale actually completes itself is, to me, just one of the most fascinating, wonderful things to be able to study as a narrative person. So that's one of the things too that I absolutely love about season 7 is that we are fulfilling and changing the world from where we started,
Yeah, but also not. It's yes and, right? Because we do this lovely turn back time through all our season big bads, which is so delightful and speaks to, we know what we're doing, like behind the scenes, we know what we're doing, which is great. Just from
I like that. Yeah. That sense of purpose. Yeah. That like we are standing here and telling you this is what we're doing. And I think that that's really great. So I love all of that. Again, all of you yelling at me because you hate season 7 and season 7 fucking sucks. Like, I get it. But this is why it speaks to me so well. This is why I will defend season 7, because I think that it's really, really fun. But going through, like, we're now at the beginning of the season, right? We're getting to see our characters again. We start with Buffy. It's about power, right? So here we have Buffy, who in season 6, we couldn't get a hold of Buffy. She was so elusive because she wasn't connected with herself. And now we have her. She is so interesting. She is awkward and empowered and fully present, but still, struggling. And having a character with a lot of power can sometimes be a threat to their sense of vulnerability. We've always made Buffy physically powerful, but personally vulnerable, and it's usually been through, the men that she's loved or been with, Angel, Riley, Spike have been the source of a lot of vulnerability. Joyce's illness and death, we got that. Her love for Dawn, her depression, her inability to reconnect with her friends and with herself. And here we see her strong, like she knows what's going on. There is no man involved defining her life or her existence. She is not resisting her role as a slayer, so we don't have an identity struggle, which we had really early on. But I like that she's awkward. I like that when she's talking, when she busts into the classroom, she's like, it's not safe. I'm afraid that you're going to smoke or whatever, and she lacks the clear charm and confidence that ironically Dawn has.
Yeah. It's funny. I actually don't love Buffy in this episode. Like she bothers me in this episode, but I also think that maybe she's supposed to a little bit because Dawn is so good. Like
Dawn is fab.
Dawn is so good. And I'm like, oh, come on, Buffy, like get it together. But Dawn is like on it. I love Dawn.
I like that Buffy's awkward and weird and just saying all the wrong things in this episode. There's something about that makes me like Buffy even more. But yes, let's talk about how amazing Dawn is, because I know that I have been a Dawn defender from the beginning. A lot of people irritated with Dawn. But Dawn in season 7 is fucking kick ass. I love how she tries and fails with the vampire, but she doesn't give up. She asks Buffy for help, but she's still in that fight. I love how charming and confident she is at school when she gets up and talks about her macaroni art. I think that that's hilarious. I love how she takes charge. She's down in this basement with these 2 kids who are scared and don't know what to do. And she is like, bag full of bricks, bitches, right? She is going to make it work, But then when Buffy gets there, she turns to Buffy and fights with her instead of feeling like she has to prove herself. She held her own until Buffy got there, and that was enough. And now she'll work with Buffy. I love all of it. I think it's great.
I love the way Dawn knows her capabilities, but also her weaknesses. I love her telling Buffy, I plan to get killed, come back as a vampire and bite you. Like,
I know.
Heck yeah. Like, she's so good. She is... I mean, for my money, just me speaking only for myself now, this Dawn is what I wanted Buffy to be earlier in the show. When Buffy was this age, there's something, I don't know, there's something about how self-possessed Dawn is. I don't know what it is entirely, but she delights me. I love her taking charge. I love her pausing in a moment of terror to be like, this reception is amazing.
I know. I mean, it's all so fabulous. I love her so much. Something else I love, of course, always I have to have a moment to talk a bit about Anya.
Yes.
She doesn't have anything to do with the rest of what's going on, nothing to do with the big story going on here. She's very separate. We have this one scene with her and Halfrek, which is setting up, things to come. Not at all involved in the narrative of this episode, where basically Halfrek is staging an intervention that Anya has hardly eviscerated anybody, lately, and people are noticing. It's a bad time to be a good guy. And when Anya says, shouldn't all of my demon friends be here? And Halfrek just says, sweetie, they are. First of all, give it up for Callie Rocha, who in 2 seconds on screen will fucking kill it.
Oh, sweetie. She sweeties Anya a couple of times in that scene. And I'm just like, oh, yes. Yes,
I love it. I love Halfrek. I could do a whole series. If they brought a whole series about Halfrek, I would absolutely be into it.
Oh my God.
She's fabulous.
Yeah. I want Halfrek. I want more Halfrek, and I want more Anya and Tara. I hate that Tara dies before we get more Tara and Anya, because the two of them together were always so delightful.
Yeah. I love the empowered Tara that we got in season 6. Tara, who was her own person. Like, Tara sort of loses her identity to Willow when she's with Willow, you know? And as much as I love Tara and Willow in so many ways, like, I would love to see Tara hanging out with Anya and Halfrek. You know, witch vengeance demons. I mean, they could stir some shit up.
There's a series.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're setting up Anya. We're setting up everything. It's so funny. That little standalone scene with the two of them is just, it's again, another one of the highlights of the episode for me. Also, I know we're not there because I don't have any notes for it, but Anya's blouse. Hello. So good. What?
Yes.
What? They did not have to go so hard. I think that's what it is. It's this little tiny scene. They did not have to go so hard on hair and makeup and wardrobe for the two of them in that scene, and they both look phenomenal.
They did.
So good.
It is a little island of delight.
Delight in a sea of what?
It's an island of delight in a sea of okay. Like I love it, but I get it. You know, there's a lot of here. You know? Some of which I think maybe Xander, although like, okay, again, Xander for me, I feel about Xander the way that I feel about the magic metaphor. That like Xander has been broken and reset so much and then broken again.
Yeah.
That at this point I'm like, I don't know who he is. I don't know what's going on. So I'm kind of like, all right, it's the same thing. I'm like, okay, so like the new Xander, right?
It's the Xander of the week is how it's starting to feel because I mean, certainly prior to season 7, I have moments of I really love Xander here and moments of I really do not love Xander here. And every week it's like, which Xander are we going to get? And we get multiple Xanders in one episode sometimes. But it is kind of like, all right, do you want to hear the story or not? You just have to accept that he's here and he's...
Exactly.
I don't know.
There's a certain point where you're just like, okay.
He's Xander fluid, it's fine. Like
he's Xander fluid. He's, honestly, you could write an entire book just on Xander and like how incredibly inconsistent he is as a character. But who he is in this episode, I dig it. I love Xander all grown, real job, confident, competent, wearing a suit, which looks great. He saves the day. This is like, I think my favorite thing is what he doesn't do in this episode, which is actually informed on who Xander has always been since the beginning of time. He saves the day and yet doesn't require that Buffy and everyone stop what they're doing to give him a cookie.
Yeah.
He's just doing his job. He's just there, figuring out what's going wrong with the floor, for construction purposes and also breaking a talisman. Like, I like season 7 Xander. And for the most part, I think season 7 Xander is not the Xander that we've gotten before, but I like season 7 Xander.
Yeah. Yeah, and just Xander, just that little moment of Xander lining up the plans for the new high school and the old high school is so great and also kind of magical. Like that, I mean, I love a good, when we lay this image over this other image, we can see, which is great. That will always delight me. Yes. And something about that attention to detail, that he would think to do that as part of his contractor powers, essentially, is really wonderful. And I think speaks to that Xander evolution, like the good Xander that we get is the Xander who is like, wait a second, I have this knowledge and access to these plans. I'm going to do a thing. I mean, I don't remember if there's a detail about Buffy asking him to do that. It's just, she asks him if he got the plans and he's showing her, yes, everything is to code, nothing creepy, nothing demonic. But I don't think she asked him to do that. Like, where's the Hellmouth now? You are here on the Hellmouth bit.
Nobody told him to do it and he figured it out. That's awesome Xander.
And like good Scooby powers too.
Yeah.
Like for so long, a problem with Xander was that he was just kind of there. Like he was Willow's friend and he was this guy and
he
the guy
fetches the jelly donuts.
Yeah. And now it's like, okay, he's got some real, mundane magic of his own that is going to help. It's cool. I like it. I love
like it
gratuitous use of special skills. I mean, that's always.
No, you know what? Yes, special skills, absolutely. There's nothing I love more in a character than competence. I mean, I think that that's great. So it was really, really fun to see this version of Xander for however long we have him. I'm going to appreciate him while he's here. We've also got Spike, right? Not much Spike, but a little bit. I love
new Spike.
Spike struggling with his mental capacity to deal with what has happened, with the ways in which he has changed. I love I tried to cut it out and all the scars on his chest, like what that says,
Okay, that's horror. That's psychological horror, if nothing else.
But it's lovely.
Yeah.
It's such a wonderful moment because here he was, he fought for this thing. And I love that he fought for this thing and he got what he wanted. And we got a little monkey's paw, right?
Yeah.
Be careful what you wish for. So I love that we've got monkey's paw Spike. I love that this is the consequence. He is suffering. He's suffering for what he's done. He's sorry for what he's done, which, as we discussed in the episode on Seeing Red, is a huge thing. I love ensouled and suffering Spike. That is like one of my favorite flavors of Spike, because this is what we need. Like, we need Spike to feel what he's done and to atone, in whatever way he can. Also, as part of the season 7, he doesn't atone too much. It's not like Angel, who is constantly searching for his fucking hair shirt, there's a certain point where he knows what he's done. He knows he can't undo it. The only thing he can do is move forward and try to do as much good as humanly possible. And I really like that, so I really like what we do with Spike. I love DB Woodside as Principal Wood. He's
so
charming
good.
and he's pretty and he's smart and he's interesting. And, I usually don't like pretty men. But I make the exception for DB Woodside because he's pretty, but he's also like charming and smart. He's not just pretty, which I really, really like.
I love his self-awareness as the new principal, but also what is his line about? It's going to be a good day. I've already bullied a family member into helping out. Like, it's great. He is charming in the sense that he is trying to charm the audience. And it's working.
And succeeding.
Yeah.
Well, I love that moment too, where he's like, I didn't get this job because of my resume. Like, it gives a sense that he doesn't have a lot of experience. He's young and he knows why he got this job because nobody else fucking wanted it, So his lack of experience as a principal, even with that, he's able to get this job. So I like that he both has that self-awareness, but that he's also telling us as a character that he knows that there's a reason why he got this job, and that he's aware. He's not going into this, blind-eyed to the hellmouth, and I think that that's really great. And I love this character. I love this actor. I think he's a wonderful addition to the cast, and he's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And he just gets better. He just gets better.
He does. He really, really does. And even when this season gets goofy, and this season does have some really goofy moments. I'm thinking of him, right? When Buffy's going to kill Principal Wood for the kid with the varsity jacket.
Yes.
But, it's so much fun. And Willow, I mean, Willow's in a bit of a holding pattern until we get her back to Sunnydale and same time, same place. And even with all of the that we're getting with Willow right now, I like her reclaiming herself. I like the new definition of magic. I like the way that she is tentatively exploring her own power. I like it.
Yeah, there's it's funny as we're talking about power. There's an interesting dynamic here with Willow and Giles.
Yeah.
Where, so she pulls the flower up through the earth, which I love. And he says, that doesn't belong there. And she says, no, it doesn't. And then he unleashes some botany knowledge on her. And she says, is there anything you don't know everything about? And she says, and then he makes a joke about synchronized swimming. But she says that with so much sadness. And it's an interesting angle on the knowledge is power.
Oh, yeah.
Saying that we have out there in the culture. We don't have it in this episode, but that, you know, knowledge is power is something that we've heard all over.
Yeah.
And Giles has knowledge. And Willow is aware of, you know, is aware of that in a way that she's grappling with, which I think on the heels of their magical battle is fascinating, right? Because I talked about what I read as kind of Giles's envy of how much power and magical ability Willow possesses. But we see this little flicker of envy from her, I think, toward him of he is so knowledgeable. He wants, it's almost like this dynamic where he wants to be able to do things and she wants to be able to know things.
Oh,
and if they could just swap, you know, like if they could just give each other a little bit of what they have, I think they would both be more content in their relationship. But I love their relationship as this kind of troubled colleagues. Yeah. Because he was always, she always looked up to him.
And he always saw her as more of an equal, I think, than any of the others.
Certainly.
Even Buffy, you know, to a certain degree. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, there are problematic elements to that of Giles holding Willow to different standards than he holds Buffy. And there's a, you know, not so subtly implied crush from Willow toward Giles, which I think is interesting. But as we're beginning season 7, they do have this really interesting working relationship where he is still a mentor to her, but he doesn't have everything that she needs to really grapple with this connection that she's learning about. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating dynamic between the two of them. But that little bit, I don't know if that was on the page, but that sadness when she says, "Is there anything you don't know everything about?" Just gets me. Willow just wanted to know shit, you guys.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I love that idea about his power and her power being, you know, kind of opposites.
Yeah.
You know?
Complementary.
And existing in tension.
Yeah.
Existing in tension with each other.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So, Noelle, I'm going to ask you, what's your favorite part?
Oh, it's Willow pulling a flower through the earth from Paraguay to England. I freaking love it. I love it's just so magical and also very Willow. Still like using her will to do her, you know, getting the earth to do her bidding. That doesn't belong here. I love it. It's beautiful, even if I don't totally understand what they're doing with magic. And also, you know, honorable mention to an appearance from Glory because I'm just so happy to see her. Just so happy.
Oh my God. Yeah. She's so wonderful. And, you know, and that brings me to my favorite part, which is the morph.
Yeah.
Right? Through all of the big bads that we've had to date, starting with Warren. Like going backwards down, counting down to the beginning, you know, to where we get Glory and Drusilla, Adam, you know, whatever, and the Master,
the
and then we
Adam
go
we
into
ever get, I think.
The best Adam we ever get, and short-lived, and thank you for that. And then we go to Buffy. It's about power. And I love how incredibly deliberate that is.
Yeah.
How confident that storytelling is, that they're, you know, basically what the show is saying is, okay, we know what we're doing this season and we're going to do it. Hang on.
Yeah.
And then that's it. And then we cut to black. So I absolutely love that. I think that it's confident, it's deliberate, and that's, you know, part of the reason why I love this season so much.
If you enjoyed this conversation and would like to join in, connect with the show on Twitter. Follow @Chipperish and use the hashtag StillPretty.
This episode of Still Pretty was brought to you by the Chipperish Media producers who support us on Patreon at the power producer level. These people are the reason why Still Pretty is coming to you free and ad-free right now. So thank you to Stephania, Shelley, Rose, Jonathan, Alice, Kristen, Sarah, Christina, Erica, and Abigail. And this week's special message for our power producers: I honestly don't think there's a human word fabulous enough for you.
To find out how you too can support Chipperish Media, visit patreon.com/chipperish. Other ways to show your support: write a great review on Apple Podcasts, tell your friends about the show, or always be in the dark with Drew, singing your little songs.
We'll be back next time with Beneath You, the second episode of Season 7. Until then, the next few months are going to be quite a ride.